In the theater of human interaction, observe the patterns that reveal themselves with startling consistency. Those who possess genuine strength move with quiet certainty, while those who lack it compensate with noise. The weak mistake volume for power, believing that the loudest voice commands the room, never understanding that true authority whispers, and the world leans in to listen. I have walked among both the genuinely powerful and the desperately insecure, and the contrast is unmistakable. Those who have nothing to prove rarely feel the need to prove it. Those who command respect through their character rarely demand it through their words. Those who understand their own worth rarely feel compelled to announce it to others. This is not merely about introversion versus extroversion, or quiet personalities versus outgoing ones. This is about the fundamental difference between strength that emerges from within and weakness that seeks validation from without. It is about the distinction between those who act from fullness and those who react from emptiness. Today, I share what I have observed about the profound power of silence, the strategic advantage of restraint, and why the most dangerous opponents are often the ones you never see coming, because they are too busy thinking while others are busy talking. The world mistakes noise for power, because noise is immediately obvious, while genuine strength often operates beneath the surface. Those who lack inner authority compensate by demanding outer attention, believing that if they can just be seen, heard, and acknowledged enough, they might finally feel the security that remains elusive within themselves. Watch how this plays out in every arena of human activity. In meetings, the insecure talk the most, interrupting others, dominating conversations, mistaking their ability to fill silence with their worthiness to lead. They mistake airtime for authority, confusing the capacity to speak with the wisdom to guide. In relationships, those who feel unloved make the most demands for affirmation, create the most drama for attention, and speak the loudest about their devotion while demonstrating it the least through consistent action. On social media, the pattern becomes even more transparent. Those who post constantly about their success, happiness, or wisdom are often those who feel the least secure about these qualities in their actual lives. They curate performances of strength while feeling weak, create displays of confidence while battling insecurity, announce their achievements while doubting their worth. Every post becomes a plea, disguised as a proclamation. Every update, a request for validation, wrapped in the language of certainty. The weak shout for attention, because attention temporarily fills the void where self-respect should reside. Each like, comment, acknowledgement, or response provides a brief hit of external validation that soothes the chronic ache of not knowing their own value. But like any addiction, the relief is temporary, requiring ever-increasing doses to achieve the same effect. Yesterday's 100 likes feel insufficient today. Today's 1,000 followers will feel inadequate tomorrow. This creates what I call performance exhaustion, the constant need to maintain an image that doesn't align with reality, the energy required to keep up appearances, to always have the right thing to say, to never appear weak or uncertain, is enormous. It leaves little capacity for the genuine development that would eliminate the need for performance in the first place. They become actors who have forgotten they are performing, trapped in characters that exhaust them but feel safer than authenticity. Consider the workplace dynamics where this plays out most clearly. The employee who constantly volunteers information about their work, who ensures everyone knows about their late nights and weekend efforts, who needs credit for every contribution. This is rarely the most valuable team member. Often it is the one who feels most insecure about their actual contributions. They mistake visibility for value, confusing being noticed with being necessary. In contrast, observe those who produce exceptional results with minimal fanfare. They let their work speak, understanding that competence demonstrates itself through outcomes rather than announcements. They focus their energy on excellence rather than on ensuring others notice their efforts toward excellence. True strength, by contrast, generates its own validation. It doesn't need external confirmation, because it is grounded in accurate self-assessment, authentic achievement, and the kind of inner work that creates unshakable confidence. When you know your actual capabilities, you don't need others to constantly affirm them. When you understand your genuine worth, you don't require perpetual proof of it from outside sources. The strong think in silence, because thinking requires space, and space cannot exist when you are constantly filling it with words designed to manage others' perceptions of you. Deep contemplation, strategic planning, and genuine insight all require the kind of mental stillness that becomes impossible when your attention is constantly focused outward, monitoring how others are receiving your performance. Silence is not the absence of power. It is power in its most concentrated form. While others expend their energy in reactive speech, those who master silence conserve their resources for strategic action. They listen, while others reveal their weaknesses, observe while others expose their strategies, and think while others exhaust themselves in pointless arguments. The philosopher Nietzsche understood that the compulsion to immediately respond, to defend every position, to have the last word in every exchange, is a form of slavery. Slavery to your own ego's need for validation. The person who must always react is never truly in control. They are being controlled by whatever provokes their response. Their silence or speech is determined by external stimuli rather than internal wisdom. Those who think in silence develop what military strategists call tactical patience, the ability to wait for the right moment to act, rather than feeling compelled to act immediately. This patience allows them to gather information while others are busy broadcasting theirs, to understand the full scope of a situation while others are reacting to fragments, to choose their battles while others fight every skirmish that presents itself. Consider the master negotiator, who allows the other party to speak first, second and third, gathering intelligence about their needs, fears, and limits, while revealing nothing of their own position. By the time they finally speak, they possess a complete map of the terrain, while their counterpart remains in darkness about their true intentions and capabilities. Silence also creates psychological pressure that reveals truth. When someone expects a response and doesn't receive one, they often feel compelled to fill the void with additional information, justifications, or admissions they never intended to make. The person who can tolerate silence, who can sit comfortably with the discomfort others feel in empty space, gains access to insights and advantages that are invisible to those who rush to fill every pause. In relationships, this principle manifests as the ability to listen deeply enough to understand what someone is actually saying beneath their words, while others are preparing their response or waiting for their turn to speak. The strategically silent person is absorbing the emotional undertones, the unspoken concerns, the real message that often contradicts the surface communication. This deeper understanding allows for responses that address actual needs rather than stated positions. The strategic use of silence also conserves your most valuable resources, your attention and energy. While others scatter their focus across multiple conversations, arguments, and reactions, you can concentrate your mental resources on what actually matters. You can think deeply instead of responding quickly, consider long-term consequences instead of immediate satisfaction, and develop comprehensive understanding instead of surface-level reactions. This conservation of mental energy allows for what ancient strategists called reserved force, keeping significant capacity in reserve, while others exhaust themselves in immediate reactions. When the crucial moment arrives, when the important decision must be made or the vital action taken, you have the mental clarity and emotional stability to perform optimally, while others are operating from depletion. Perhaps most importantly, silence allows you to maintain what the ancient strategists called the element of surprise. When you don't announce your thoughts, plans, or capabilities, others cannot prepare defenses against them. When you don't reveal your hand through constant commentary, you maintain the advantage of being underestimated by those who mistake quiet observation for passive disengagement. The art of strategic silence also involves understanding when to break it. The words of someone who speaks rarely carry more weight than those who speak constantly. When the habitually silent person finally speaks, others listen with an attention that the chronically talkative can never command. This creates the opportunity to have maximum impact with minimal effort. A single well-timed observation can accomplish what hours of argument cannot. Understanding why the weak shout for attention requires examining the deeper psychology that drives this behavior. At its core, attention-seeking emerges from a fundamental disconnection from one's own inherent worth, a disconnection that creates an insatiable hunger for external validation that can never be permanently satisfied. Those who constantly seek attention operate from what psychologists call an external locus of validation. They have never developed the capacity to recognize their own value independent of others' recognition. This creates a cycle where self-worth becomes entirely dependent on external feedback, making every interaction a test of whether they are acceptable, valuable, or worthy of love and respect. This dependency manifests in several predictable patterns. The first is what I call conversational dominance. The need to be the center of every discussion, to turn every topic back to themselves, to ensure that their voice is the loudest and most frequent in any group. They interrupt not because they have something more important to say, but because silence feels like invisibility, and invisibility feels like death to their fragile sense of self. The second pattern is achievement broadcasting. The compulsive need to announce every success, accomplishment, or positive experience to as many people as possible. This isn't sharing joy, but seeking validation. Not celebrating achievements but desperately hoping others will confirm that these achievements make them worthy of respect and admiration. They cannot enjoy their successes privately, because private success doesn't feed the external validation they crave. The third pattern is victim performance. The tendency to amplify struggles, difficulties, and challenges, not for the purpose of genuine connection or problem solving, but to generate sympathy, attention, and care from others. They become addicted to the temporary sense of importance that comes from being the focus of others' concern, even when that concern is based on their suffering. The fourth pattern is opinion broadcasting. The compulsion to share their thoughts on every topic, regardless of their expertise or the relevance of their perspective. They mistake having opinions for having wisdom, confusing the ability to generate thoughts with the capacity for insight. Every current event becomes an opportunity to demonstrate their intelligence. Every controversy a platform for showing their sophistication. These patterns create what might be called attention addiction, a cycle where the temporary relief provided by external attention creates an increased craving for more attention. Like any addiction, tolerance develops, requiring progressively more dramatic behaviors to achieve the same psychological satisfaction. The quiet accomplishment that once felt sufficient now feels invisible. The gentle conversation that once felt connecting now feels inadequate. The private moment of joy that once felt complete now feels wasted if not shared and validated. This addiction also creates what I observe as presence poverty. The inability to be fully present in any experience, because part of the attention is always focused on how the experience can be converted into material for external sharing. They cannot enjoy a sunset without photographing it for social media. They cannot have a conversation without planning how to repeat the clever parts to other audiences. They cannot achieve something without immediately strategizing how to announce it for maximum impact. The tragedy is that this constant focus on external validation prevents the development of internal validation systems. They never learn to recognize their own growth, appreciate their own insights, or feel satisfied with their own progress, because their attention is constantly directed outward, seeking confirmation rather than developing the capacity for self-recognition. The weak also shout for attention because they have never learned to distinguish between being seen and being understood, between being noticed and being valued, between being the center of attention and being genuinely important. They settle for the shallow satisfaction of momentary notice because they don't know how to create the deeper satisfaction of authentic connection and genuine contribution. The development of true strength, the kind that thinks in silence rather than shouting for attention, requires the cultivation of what I call inner authority. This is the capacity to trust your own judgment, value your own opinions, and find satisfaction in your own recognition of your growth and achievements. Inner authority begins with the practice of self-observation without self-judgment. This means developing the ability to see yourself clearly, your strengths, weaknesses, patterns, and tendencies, without immediately moving to criticism or praise. Like a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon, you learn to observe your own behavior with curiosity rather than evaluation. This objective self-awareness becomes the foundation for genuine self-knowledge. The second element is what the Stoics called preferred indifference, learning to engage fully with external outcomes while maintaining equanimity about results. You work excellently, not because others will praise your work, but because excellence expresses your nature. You speak truthfully, not because others will validate your honesty, but because truth aligns with your values. Your actions emerge from internal standards rather than external expectations. This process requires developing what might be called validation independence, the ability to recognize and appreciate your own progress, insights, and accomplishments without needing others to confirm them. You learn to notice when you handle a difficult situation better than you would have previously. You appreciate your own growth in wisdom, skill, or character. You feel genuine satisfaction from alignment between your values and actions, regardless of whether anyone else notices or acknowledges this alignment. Inner authority also involves developing comfort with being misunderstood, underestimated, or overlooked. When your sense of worth comes from internal recognition rather than external validation, you can allow others to have incorrect perceptions of you without feeling compelled to correct them. This freedom from the need to manage others' opinions liberates enormous energy for productive use. The cultivation of inner authority requires regular practices that strengthen your connection to your own wisdom and intuition. This might involve daily reflection periods where you review your actions and decisions against your own standards. It might include regular solitude where you can hear your own thoughts without the interference of others' opinions and expectations. It might involve challenging yourself with progressively more difficult situations where you must rely on your own judgment rather than seeking external guidance. One of the most important practices is learning to sit comfortably with silence, both external and internal. This means developing the capacity to be alone with your thoughts without immediately seeking distraction, entertainment, or social connection. In this silence, you begin to distinguish between your authentic thoughts and the mental chatter generated by social conditioning, anxiety, or the need for stimulation. Another crucial practice is what I call private victories, accomplishing things that no one else knows about, and finding genuine satisfaction in these hidden achievements. This might involve overcoming a personal fear, developing a new skill, or maintaining a challenging discipline. These private victories teach you that your sense of accomplishment doesn't depend on external recognition, that growth can be its own reward. The development of inner authority also requires learning to make decisions based on your own assessment of what is right, wise, or necessary, even when these decisions are unpopular or misunderstood. Each time you choose your authentic path over the easier path of social approval, you strengthen your capacity for independent judgment and reduce your dependence on external validation. Perhaps most importantly, inner authority involves developing what might be called outcome independence, the ability to give your best effort while remaining detached from specific results. You speak your truth without needing others to agree. You offer your contributions without requiring them to be accepted. You express your authentic self without demanding that others understand or appreciate it. Those who have developed genuine strength understand that communication is not about expressing every thought or feeling, but about choosing when, how, and with whom to share their insights for maximum positive impact. They have learned the art of strategic communication, speaking when their words can create value, remaining silent when speech would create confusion or conflict. Strategic communication begins with the recognition that not every audience is ready for every truth. What seems obvious to you after years of study and reflection may be incomprehensible or threatening to someone just beginning their journey of understanding. The master communicator adapts their message to their audience's capacity to receive it, not because they are being dishonest, but because they understand that effective communication requires meeting people where they are, not where you wish they were. This involves developing what I call audience awareness, the ability to quickly assess someone's openness to different types of information, their emotional state, their current priorities, and their capacity for challenge or change. A message that would inspire one person might overwhelm another. A truth that would liberate someone ready to hear it might threaten someone who depends on illusions for their stability. The strategic communicator also understands the power of timing. The same message delivered at different moments can have completely different effects. What falls on deaf ears during times of stress might be eagerly received during moments of openness. What seems irrelevant during periods of success might become invaluable during times of challenge. Patience becomes a communication skill, waiting for the right moment to share insights that might otherwise be wasted or rejected. Another aspect of strategic communication is understanding the difference between teaching and preaching. Teaching involves helping others discover truths for themselves through questions, examples, and experiences. Preaching involves telling others what they should think, feel, or believe. The teacher plants seeds and trusts the natural process of growth. The preacher demands immediate acceptance and becomes frustrated when it doesn't occur. Those who have mastered strategic communication also understand the principle of earned authority. The recognition that your ability to influence others depends not on your desire to share wisdom, but on others' recognition of your wisdom through your actions, character, and results. They understand that credibility cannot be claimed, only demonstrated over time through consistent alignment between their words and their life. This leads to what might be called influence through being, rather than influence through speaking. The most powerful communication often happens without words, through how you handle challenges, how you treat others, how you conduct yourself under pressure. Your life becomes your message, and this message is far more persuasive than any words you might speak. Strategic communication also involves mastering the art of questions rather than statements. Instead of telling others what to think, the strategic communicator asks questions that help others discover truth for themselves. This approach respects others' intelligence and autonomy, while guiding them toward insights they can own, rather than merely accept. The mastery of strategic communication includes understanding when silence is the most powerful response. Sometimes the most influential thing you can do is refuse to engage with drama, manipulation, or attempts to provoke you into reactive speech. Your silence communicates strength, self-control, and the kind of inner authority that cannot be shaken by others' emotional states or tactical provocations. Perhaps most importantly, strategic communication involves speaking from fullness rather than emptiness. Sharing insights because you have something valuable to offer, not because you need validation, attention, or approval. When your words emerge from genuine wisdom rather than ego needs, they carry a weight and authenticity that people can sense, even when they cannot articulate why your communication feels different from the noise they usually encounter. The strategic communicator also understands the importance of what is left unsaid. They recognize that mystery is more intriguing than explanation, that questions can be more powerful than answers, that allowing others to reach conclusions independently creates stronger commitment than trying to convince them directly. They understand that people protect what they discover, but resist what is imposed upon them. The path I walked taught me that true power lies not in being seen, but in seeing clearly, not in being heard, but in listening deeply, not in demanding attention, but in commanding respect through character. The greatest strength is the strength that needs no announcement. The deepest wisdom is the wisdom that speaks only when silence would be the greater disservice. Your modern world has amplified the noise of the weak, while often drowning out the whispers of the strong. Social media rewards the loudest voices, not the wisest ones. Success is often measured by visibility rather than value, by followers rather than character, by the ability to generate attention rather than the capacity to create positive change. But the ancient principles remain true. Empty vessels make the most sound, while full ones rest in quiet confidence. The river that runs deepest often flows most silently, while shallow streams babble constantly as they rush over stones. The mountain needs no voice to proclaim its height, while the hill shouts about every foot of elevation. I have observed that those who truly change the world often do so quietly, working behind the scenes, thinking in silence while others exhaust themselves in public performance. They understand that sustainable influence comes not from commanding attention, but from deserving it, not from demanding respect, but from earning it through consistent demonstration of wisdom, character, and competence. The weak shout for attention because they mistake noise for power, volume for authority, visibility for value. They have never learned that true strength is like water, soft enough to nourish, persistent enough to carve canyons, powerful enough to move mountains, yet humble enough to always seek the lowest place. Remember that in a world full of noise, silence becomes a form of rebellion. In an age of constant communication, the ability to remain quiet becomes a superpower. In a culture that rewards performance, authenticity becomes revolutionary. In a society that confuses volume with value, genuine wisdom becomes both rare and precious. Learn to distinguish between the urgent and the important, between what demands immediate response and what deserves thoughtful consideration. Develop the capacity to sit with information before sharing it, to process experiences before broadcasting them, to understand situations before commenting on them. Cultivate the inner strength that makes external validation unnecessary. Build the internal authority that makes others' opinions interesting but not essential. Develop the self-knowledge that makes comparison pointless and competition irrelevant. When you do speak, let your words carry the weight of consideration rather than the impulse of reaction. Let them emerge from wisdom rather than ego, from service rather than self-interest, from fullness rather than emptiness. Understand that the most powerful position is often the one that requires no defense. The strongest argument is often the one that needs no voice. The greatest influence is often the one that operates in silence. The weak will continue to shout for attention, mistaking noise for strength, volume for power. Let them. Your silence is not indifference, it is strategy. Your quiet is not weakness, it is concentrated power. Your restraint is not passivity, it is the choice of those who understand that true strength needs no announcement, because it announces itself through presence, character, and the unmistakable authority that emerges from genuine wisdom. In the end, you will be remembered not for how much noise you made, but for how much value you created. Not for how often you spoke, but for how deeply you understood. Not for how much attention you attracted, but for how much positive change you generated through the quiet application of wisdom, skill, and character. The strong think in silence, because silence is where strength is born, nurtured, and refined. In that silence, you will find not the absence of power, but the presence of the only power that truly matters, the power that emerges from within and needs no external confirmation to know its worth. Master this silence. Let others have the noise. Your quiet strength will reshape the world while they are still arguing about who deserves credit for talking about it. The most dangerous enemy is the one who thinks while you speak, plans while you react, and acts while you are still making noise. Be that enemy to chaos, confusion, and the weak who mistake volume for victory. In silence, find your strength. In restraint, discover your power. In the space between words, locate the wisdom that transforms, not just your own life, but the lives of all those fortunate enough to encounter the quiet authority of someone who has learned when to speak and when to simply be.